Welcome to Studio Movie Recap. Ready for another quick rundown of an awesome movie? Let's dive right in, and if you enjoy, don't forget to like and subscribe for more recaps. The movie begins with Chris Decker, a successful businessman, engaged in a video call with his wife, Jamie, discussing their impending divorce and signing the papers. After the call, Jamie tucks their daughter, Willow, into bed. Willow expresses how much she misses her father, and Jamie reassures her by saying that she still loves Chris too. Chris heads to a convenience store to buy some ice cream and encounters Skye, an attractive woman who asks for his recommendation on wine. He suggests a bottle, and they chat briefly before Skye leaves. Outside, Chris notices that Skye's Uber ride has been cancelled, so he offers her a lift home. Skye is impressed by Chris's lavish home and initially assumes it belongs to his parents, but Chris reveals it's his, thanks to his thriving career in security software. Skye mentions that she used to be a model but moved to the countryside in search of a new direction in life. That night, Chris and Skye share drinks by the fireplace, their connection deepens, and they share an intimate moment. The next morning, Chris wakes up to find Skye gone. Meanwhile, Skye returns to her apartment, where she runs into Ronald, who teases her about the walk of shame. Skye's roommate, Lisa, is upset with her for not coming home, but Skye dismisses her concerns and retreats to her room, ignoring Lisa's pleas for an explanation. As Chris reflects on his memories of Willow during a lonely night, he decides to visit a bar. To his surprise, Skye is working there as a bartender. She approaches him excitedly, and they strike up a conversation. However, Chris bluntly tells her that the only reason he decided to meet her was that his wife wanted him to move on, catching Skye off guard. Even so, they continue their conversation after Skye's shift ends. She opens up, admitting she lied about having a family and refers to herself as damaged goods. Chris tries to console her. Their conversation is interrupted when Chris notices a man named Kju attempting to steal his car. Chris confronts him, but Kju retaliates by breaking Chris's leg with a crowbar before fleeing the scene. The attack leaves Chris with a broken leg, confined to a wheelchair with his leg in a cast, and Skye offers to take him home. The following morning, Chris struggles to get to the couch while waiting for his private nurse, who has yet to arrive. Seeing his difficulty, Skye offers to take care of him herself. When Chris jokingly asks about her qualifications, she seductively whispers that he could have her instead, then kisses him passionately. Chris accepts her offer and cancels his nurse's appointment. Meanwhile, Lisa waits for Skye to return to their apartment, with Ronald making snide comments about how Lisa was doing well before Skye came into her life. Lisa tells him to be quiet, but Ronald's words clearly affect her. When Skye finally arrives, she brushes past Ronald with a smirk and enters the apartment to pack her belongings. Lisa tearfully demands an explanation, but Skye instead invites her to sit beside her on the bed. Skye then kisses Lisa on the lips, calming her. Later, Chris is awakened by Skye's gentle voice as she seduces him in bed. While lying together, Chris confesses that he loves her, but Skye attributes his feelings to the side effects of the medication he's on. Nevertheless, she admits that she already loves him too. Meanwhile, Ronald bangs on Lisa's apartment door, demanding rent, but to his horror, he discovers Lisa's lifeless body in the bathtub, her wrist slit, surrounded by blood. At the same time, Skye is testing Chris's facial recognition security system as he begins to stir. Detective Lane starts investigating Lisa's death, questioning Ronald and suspecting foul play, but their conversation is interrupted by the media swarming the scene. Elsewhere, Jamie video calls Chris, checking in on their divorce proceedings. Chris explains that he's unable to deal with it at the moment due to his leg injury. Concerned, Jamie suggests sending Willow over to cheer him up, and Chris agrees. Afterward, Chris searches for Skye, who is in the shower, but his curiosity gets the better of him, and he rummages through her belongings, finding a photo of her with Lisa. Skye catches him, but instead of getting angry, she smiles, saying she would have done the same thing. She tosses her towel at him, and they end up having an intense, passionate encounter. That night, Skye enters Willow's old room, humming a lullaby before laying down to sleep. The next morning, Chris wakes up in a panic when he can't find his phone, which is now mysteriously non-functional. As he searches, he's distracted by a news report about Lisa's death, asking if it was murder or suicide. When Skye brings him breakfast, Chris insists she should contact the police. Skye, however, nonchalantly admits to killing Lisa, smiling as she coldly comments on how good the chicken tastes. Chris is understandably shocked, and Skye begins explaining how Lisa was nosy and envious, especially since she had the apartment. Skye reveals that for 2 months, she used Lisa's place to spy on Chris's house through a telescope, learning everything about him and earning his trust. Furious, Chris orders Skye to leave his house. But Sky just smiles, and when Chris attempts to flee, she uses his phone to lock all the doors, trapping him inside with her. She tases him, leaving him unconscious. Back at the apartment, Ronald finds the telescope Sky had used to spy on Chris. He starts peering into other homes with it, and when he spots a naked woman, he eagerly grabs a chair to sit and watch. Meanwhile, Sky ties Chris to a wheelchair, demanding his security codes. When he refuses, she throws him to the floor and tortures him with an electric drill. Back at the apartment, Ronald eventually moves the telescope's angle, accidentally spotting Sky dressing after torturing Chris. The following morning, Chris is in agonizing pain while Ronald watches Sky prepare him to look presentable for a meeting with bankers and brokers. She plans to liquidate Chris's assets to fund her own company, but Chris resists. In desperation, he attempts to choke Sky, but she retaliates by stabbing him in the chest with scissors. She then threatens to harm his family if he doesn't comply. She takes away all his gadgets, unplugs the security system, and snaps photos of his art collection. Soon after, people arrive at Chris's house, giving him hope, only for that hope to shatter when Kju reappears. Sky explains her plan to sell off Chris's belongings. Sometime later, Ronald secretly watches from his car as Sky leaves the house. With the coast clear, Ronald breaks in through a window, finding Chris injured and tied up. At the same time, Sky monitors Ronald's movements through the security cameras on Chris's phone. Ronald takes his time criticizing Chris for being rich before removing the duct tape from his mouth. Desperate, Chris begs Ronald to call the police. But Ronald, unwilling to help for free, demands something valuable in return. Chris offers him a Picasso painting, but Ronald declines, explaining that he doesn't own a phone because he believes they cause brain cancer. When Sky returns, Ronald quickly grabs a knife, threatening her before fleeing upstairs with the painting. Unfazed, Sky smiles ominously and walks upstairs, armed with a samurai sword, all while monitoring Ronald's movements through Chris's phone. With Sky distracted, Chris seizes the opportunity to break free and escapes on a snowmobile, speeding off to the backdrop of Ronald's screams as Sky repeatedly stabs him. Chris crashes on the road and nearly gets hit by a car, but the driver, Sebastian, helps him inside and assures him that no one is following him. Sebastian drives off with Chris, who frantically urges him to call 911. Sebastian dials the number and hands the phone to Chris, but when the car reaches its destination, Chris is horrified to find that they've returned to his house. Sebastian knocks Chris out, and a bloody Sky greets him upon his return. Sebastian introduces himself as Sky's stepfather and mocks Chris for believing he was safe. As they drag him inside, Sebastian brags about how he trained Sky in the art of manipulation and how they make their living by targeting people like Chris. That night, Chris's heart breaks further as he's forced to listen to Sky and Sebastian having rough sex. Later, Sky walks up to Chris and, in a rare moment of vulnerability, admits she'll miss the life they had together. But Chris accuses her of lying and questions if Sky is even her real name. Despite his bitterness, he confesses that he genuinely loved her and would have given her everything, she didn't have to steal it. Sky coldly retorts that Chris is still alive, reminding him of the fortune she knows he has in the bank. She takes him to Sebastian, who explains that they need his thumbprint to access his assets. They cut off his thumb to get the print. Jamie arrives at Chris's house to drop off Willow, who excitedly runs to her room. As Jamie notices the mess and the bloodstains on the floor, she orders Willow to come back. Sky waltzes in, holding Willow in her arms, prompting Jamie to threaten to call the police. Their tension escalates when Sebastian arrives, and soon, Jamie and Willow are locked in a room with an injured Chris. Meanwhile, Sebastian and Sky drive to the bank to access Chris's funds. At the house, Jamie and Chris figure out how to escape by sending Willow through the vent. At the bank, Sebastian successfully uses Chris's severed thumb to access the vault. Meanwhile, back at the house, Jamie manages to open the vent and sends Willow through, allowing her to crawl to safety. Chris then reveals to Jamie that his bearer bonds are the reason for the robbery, leaving Jamie in shock. She admits that she had hidden his money, fearing that Chris wouldn't provide her with adequate financial support. Back at the bank, Sebastian and Sky are furious when they find a letter from Jamie in the safety deposit box, indicating that she had hidden the money. Enraged, they rush back to the house, where they see on the monitor that Willow has already escaped. Willow unlocks the security door just as Sebastian and Sky return. The villains split up to search for the family. Suddenly, Chris surprises Sebastian and nearly strikes him with a weapon, but Sebastian quickly overpowers him. As Chris stumbles to the ground, Sebastian beats him mercilessly. Sky, holding Chris at gunpoint, demands to know where Jamie is hiding. In her frustration and rage, however, she mistakenly shoots her stepfather instead, killing him. Despite her shock, Chris uses the opportunity to stab Sky in the shoulder. He grabs his phone and hides from her as she removes the weapon, grinning through the pain. Skye picks up her gun and resumes her hunt for Chris, who uses his phone to distract her by playing loud orchestral music throughout the house. He then shuts off the lights, monitoring her movements through his phone. Skye, moving stealthily through the darkened halls, taunts Chris, firing her gun at the various noises she hears. Chris catches her by surprise and tries to pin her down, but she stabs him in the chest. Just as Skye prepares to finish him off, Jamie steps in to save him. The two women struggle violently, with Skye eventually gaining the upper hand and wounding Jamie's feet. Chris, desperate and wounded, manages to strike Skye's leg, immobilizing her temporarily. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Willow fires a gun, and Skye collapses to the floor. Although shocked by the situation, Jamie rushes to embrace her daughter as they both process what's just happened. As Skye lies dying, she tries to say something to Chris. Sirens wail in the distance as police approach, and Jamie quickly takes Willow to safety. Chris, crawling away from Skye, hears her last words, Margaret. In her final breath, Skye reveals her real name, a single tear falling from her lifeless eyes. For the first time, Skye, Margaret, has said something honest.